In our Thursday seminar series. This morning, I welcome all of you from all over the world, from wherever you are in the world. I see on the list of participants, I am seeing people in other islands in the Caribbean. I see people from the Middle East, from people who are in the US. I see Jamaica, and welcome to all of you. It is morning here, so I greet you. Good morning. Our seminar series is decades old, and I'm going to say a few words for about 5 minutes. I'm known to talk a little bit long, but this morning I have been asked by Prof. Amin to speak for about 5 minutes just to give her a little bit of background. It is her first time that speaking in this part of the world, and so I share a little bit about us. So our seminar series is decades old. We have a long tradition of a healthy, active Thursday seminar series in the Department of Chemistry. Certainly now we have moved to a new space, this virtual space, and it allows us an opportunity to connect with a wider audience. It's a great opportunity, in fact, to build the scientific enterprise, to connect and build a network. And importantly, this morning we are talking a little bit more about networking with other scientists, but also with other stakeholders in the scientific enterprise. So I'm hoping that the policymakers, people from the Ministry of Science and Technology here in Jamaica have been invited, and they have told me that they will be coming in, and certainly more people from all over the Caribbean. Our colleagues, Amal from Tian and Twas, should also be joining us. If you are out there, I say welcome to all of you. So this morning, the Caribbean, I introduced to those of you who don't know much about the Caribbean and science in the Caribbean. We do have a culture of excellence in science, albeit it is based on what some have called the iconic model. So the systems are weak, like it is in many developing countries, Amal, and having worked with in TWAS, we are aware of what other colleagues in developing countries face. The same is true here. The culture of science is weak, the science infrastructure is weak, but with networking, many icons have been able to achieve great things through individual connections, really, and not through institutional connections or connections which are embedded and which are systematic. And so for sustainability, we know that hopefully will change. But we've made our name in the Caribbean in science, and possibly one of the most recent outstanding achievements is of Professor Anthony Chen, who sat on the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which shared in the 2007 Nobel Peace Prize. But in Jamaica, we have made significant contributions in the areas of natural products research, pesticides research, materials chemistry, and these things have impacted our society, both locally in Jamaica, regionally in the Caribbean, and internationally. So this morning's topic, scientific networking for international relations as a tool for international relations, is a discussion that I would like to bring attention to, and that Professor Amal Amin has been working all over the world to bring attention to. So Professor Amal Amin is an associate professor in Egypt. She has certainly a large number of publications, has worked on numerous projects, has numerous awards, and has been involved in numerous research activities. She's worked and traveled to several countries, maybe over 35 and still counting. And she was co-founder of the Global and Egyptian Young Academy. So the Global Young Academy, GYA, and the Egyptian Young Academy. She's on the steering and advisory member board. She's a steering and advisory board member currently on both of those organizations. She was president and co-founder of the Egyptian Society for Nanotechnology. She was a TWAS Young Affiliate Fellow, and that's where we met. And now we have moved over into the TIAN network and continue to work there. She's affiliated to TWAS AAS Science Diplomacy project. She's an alumni of that activity. She's actively participated in several high-level meetings of the Inter Academy IAP. She has given advice to numerous conferences, science advice. She's a founding fellow of TWAS-TIAN of AETEW. She's the founding chair of Women in Science Without Borders, WISWB. She's the founding chair of the annual World Forum for Women in Science. She's the organizing chair of the Saturday Science webinars. And she has recently been featured in numerous science books, the NASAC IAP 2017 and 2020, the SAYAS Success Stories of Young Scientists 2016, Nature 2020, Chemistry World, Royal Society of Chemistry, and SciDev 2020, and so many others. From all of what we have said, ladies and gentlemen, what is clear is that Amal has been busy building networks and getting networks to work for those of us who are stakeholders in the scientific enterprise. I ask you to give a warm welcome to Professor Amal Amin.
Thanks a lot, Nuruddin. Thanks a lot for this warm introduction, for the invitation to give this talk. And I hope we can build bridges, and it will be a beginning for cooperation, for future cooperation. I will share my screen. Do you see it?
Yes, we are seeing it, Prof.
Okay. Is it clear? Yeah. Okay. Today I will.
Clear.
Yeah. Okay. As Morfidine said, I will talk today about scientific networking, a successful way for influential international relations. Thanks, Morfidine, for the introduction. And from my introduction, it seems that I spent lots of time to make these bridges and to make successful networking. But networking is natural by the human nature. And if we see in all religions, we will see that all religions recommended networking. As here in Quran or in Bible, we see that the gods say that you are tribes and races, and you have to know each others, and you have to cooperate with each others. Also in the Christianity, you have to cooperate and to build bridges with the others, whether men or women, so that no difference between women or men. We are all together. We have to cooperate, to build, and to make the earth more suitable place to live in. And the only difference between us is the merit and the deed. Okay. The outline of my lecture after this small introduction, that I will speak about science diplomacy as a successful international relations and networking term, movement of young academies and women in science without borders, general information and personal experience. What about science diplomacy? If we will see the definition of Christine Grenet about the difference between science and diplomacy. What is science? Science is the truth, and diplomacy is the willingness of nations to have respectful dialogue about the truth, so that they are not strange from each other, but they can interact with each other and cooperate with each other. What science diplomacy term or science advice the recent term? In January 2010, the Royal Society and the AAAS noted that science diplomacy refers to three terms. Three terms means science in diplomacy, diplomacy in science, science for diplomacy, through three actions for science diplomacy. Science in diplomacy means global issues with science basis like climate change, global health, agriculture, and so on. Diplomacy for science, getting things done for science. Science for diplomacy, The science will facilitate the international relations and bilateral collaborations. Recently, science advice appeared as a good term that the science also must make advice to the governments. We should interact with the decision makers. We should advise the governments. And it's very clear during the pandemic that the role of science must be extended to the decision makers. They should advise the decision makers, whether in health, in food security, in water, in all aspects of life. The science must advise the policymakers. The science must be present strongly in the human being lives. Okay? And recently, the International Network for Governmental Science Advice Network appeared and established in 2014 during the first conference for INSA to encourage this action, advice for the governments. But if we define the science diplomacy, it's all actions across borders, virtually every significant issue confronting humanity with science and technology basis should be included into the term of science diplomacy. So that climate change, pollution, sustainable fisheries, management of water, and so on, all these actions need science diplomacy, need cooperation between nations. Science diplomacy, there are several types of scientific collaborations like South-South, South-North, and so on. But we have to confess that science diplomacy activities still lagging behind. Why? I don't know, maybe because of the desire for the policymakers themselves not to hear across borders from scientists and so on. But we have to confess that recently we hear about science diplomacy very strongly more than before. And I recommend this action, especially during pandemics or crisis or something like that, that we have to cooperate with each other. Recently, there are several courses and several online courses and so on to know about science diplomacy, like TUAS AAAS Science Diplomacy Program. It's in Trieste every year, but this year it transferred to online because of the pandemic. Here they bring the policymakers, the scientists, the press, communication to communication people or something like that to hear to each other. The scientists must speak and the policymakers must hear and so on and vice versa. To learn about each other, to know that no country can do it alone, or no country should want to do it alone. We have to cooperate across borders and we have to know about each other. It's a very successful course. Examples on science diplomacy, recently we can hear about health diplomacy, water diplomacy, agricultural diplomacy, climate, ocean diplomacy. IEB, it's the big action of science diplomacy. It's the network of academies of science and TUAS as well. Also, the big action of science diplomacy is sustainable development goals. If we see the sustainable development goals, we will find all of them need international cooperation across borders between nations. Because if we know about the butterfly effect, that every single action in one country or one place in the world will affect the other side of the world. So that if we need clean energy, if we need clean water, if we need clean environment and so on, so that we all have to cooperate together worldwide, not only in our region or in our country or in our continent, but we have to cooperate across borders. The second activity I will talk about, and it's a big example about the scientific collaboration across border. It's the movement of young academies. The movement of young academies, it began years ago, maybe in 2000, with the German Young Academy. Then after that, the Global Young Academy was founded. But at first, the TUAS and the UNESCO, Moroccan Ministry of National Education, and different organizations agreed to form the World Association of Young Scientists. Then afterward, the IEB, the Network of Science Academies across the world, decided to make a program for young scientists where they gathered all distinguished young scientists in 2008 in the World Economic Forum in Davos in China. It's a special event for the young scientists connected with the World Forum Davos, the World Economic Forum Davos. Okay, but afterward in 2009, they held the same conference in China as well, and more than 40 young scientists gathered there at Summer Davos, and they decided to build the Global Young Academy, or to build a forum for all young scientists all over the world to express about themselves and to change the world with science. Why admired me at that moment that I heard about scientists from all over the world, but it's the first time to hear the young generations. The young generations for excellent young scientists from all over the world wanted hardly and sincerely to change the world with science, where they composed a piece called The Passion for Science, Passion for a Better World, that as a young scientist from all 5 continents, we are passionate about science and we are passionate about science contributing to a better world. We wish to enhance the contribution that we can make to science and that science can make to society. I was lucky that I was one of this group of distinguished young scientists. And we decided to form, as I said, the Global Young Academy at that moment in China during the summer Davos in China. And we mentioned several aims for the Young Academy generally to be the focus of the young scientists all over the world. That our aim to empower the young scientists and researchers across gender, disciplines, and all walks of knowledge, all fields, and so on. Also to provide opportunities and intellectual platform for interaction between young scientists, decision makers, intellectuals, entrepreneurs, professionals, maybe journalists, press, everything, NGOs, youth, to interact with the society. As I said, our aim was to change the world with science, so that we decided to interact with the society to change it. Then promoting other aim for us, promoting excellence and leadership skills among young scientists to change the status of brain drain to brain gain. We have to have this decision at certain time that we have to reverse the brain drain to brain gain, so that we have to help the young scientists to enable their voice to be heard by the decision maker, to change the environment of work, to change the conditions of work, to make some kind of encouragement, some multidisciplinary cooperation, projects, international relations, and so on, just to support the young scientists wherever they are, to encourage them to stay at their countries or to return back, to reverse the action which all of us suffer from, the brain drain. Also encourage networking, as I said, and additionally increasing the public awareness about science and enhancing the status of science and increasing the science literacy in the societies. Also acting as advisors for critical issues and become a global leader, global future leaders, so that qualifying them to become global future leaders, the young scientists, by increasing their qualifications, suggesting new qualifications like science communications, leadership. We need in Global Young Academy leadership program, very good leadership program, and so on. And also make them as as advisors or experts for all cases and for all scientific matters all over the world. And I think we succeeded in Global Young Academy to be partner for several organizations like International Science Council, UNESCO, and so on. In brief, the foundation of Global Young Academy had several aims, like empowering young mid-career scientists and youth as future leaders, encouraging international relations and networking across borders, promoting excellence and sharing in enhancing research environment to reverse brain drain in developing countries, sharing in development plans, increasing public awareness by enhancing science, communication, science literacy, science education, science and society, working with society. And it was our main aim. The main usual working group for any young academy is science and society, science education, and interdisciplinary research for global, regional challenges or problems, and supporting early career research. So that we can say through Young Academy, we can give hand to all young scientists and gather them in one template or one forum to express about themselves and to develop them to be the future leaders, whether locally, regionally, or on the international level. So that I can say that the Young Academy action or the Young Academy template is an example of sustainability. I will compare it by the action which made by Louis Pasteur when in 1860s France had serious problem with silk industry, so that he transferred to the location of the problem. He engaged with the public. He treated with the problem in practical way, got observation, scientific observation, and then he developed his theory and built the research center and trained the public so that he made the good interaction between the science and society in practical way. So that I convert this with the action of young academies and so on. We can say that the scientists should have another rule, should have good interaction with the society, and should have some action to fix the society. Like Mark Zuckerberg said, the CEO of Facebook, that our society needs more heroes who are scientists, researchers, and engineers. We need to celebrate and reward the people who cure diseases, expand our understanding of humanity, and work to improve people's life. Also, we can recall the say of Stephen Hawking, the great scientist, that scientists have become the bearers of the torch of discovery in our quest for knowledge. That's why on my return from Summer Davos, I submitted application to form Egyptian Young Academy, and then I became co-founder for the Egyptian Young Academy, which had the same aims of Global Young Academy to empower the young scientists as future leaders and to share in increasing public awareness and to share in some studies to enhance the environment of the work environment of the young scientists and so on. It was built under the umbrella of Egyptian Academy of Science. Also, we encourage the collaboration, international collaborations and sharing in organizations and so on. We made several activities, including science days, to interact with the public, with the youth. We transferred to places away from Cairo, the capital, and displayed several scientific phenomena and cutting-edge research in simple way, simplified science, to make this interaction with the society with science. We got very good support from the youth, from the audience, from academicians, and support from the decision makers, academy, and the press. Because we believe that education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think, like Albert Einstein said. And we also have to share to raise new generation which believe in science more or like other amusement ways like football, like music, that when kids look up to great scientists the way they do to great musicians and actors, civilization will jump to the next level. It's our aim, really. It must be our aim as scientists. We must connect to the public. We must share with our science to the public, and we have to enhance the status of science in our society by all ways, not only by lectures, maybe by sharing in every several activities and so on. The third part, which I will talk about, women in science without borders. From my experience all over the world, I think that girls are one of the most powerful forces for change in the world. When their rights are recognized, their needs are met, and their voices are heard, they drive positive change in their families, their communities, and the world. That I believe in. This say I believe in very strongly. From my experience, from travels, from so on, that always we speak about women in science as separate case. But it's not separate case. Empowerment of women in science, it's empowerment for the scientific society. Like empowerment for women, it's empowerment for the society itself. So that we have to empower girls and women in science, like empowerment girls and women in the society itself. It's a strength, additional strength gained by the society. Because how to ignore 50% of the population in any country? You, they have to have their rights, they have to have the strength to share strongly in everything. Luckily, this year, about several women gained the Nobel Prize, but I hope this case will continue, not only this year. So that I founded Women in Science Without Borders in 2017 as movement for cooperation between males and females. I forgot to say that usually we speak about women in science, but what about women in science with men as well? Because we are partners, we are not separate from each other. So that Women in Science, it's the name of the initiative, Women in Science Without Borders, but it's for both, for women and men. We have to cooperate to each other so that we encourage the collaboration, the cooperation between males and females. And our slogan is Science for Sustainable Development, including gender equality with the impact of science. Also, it's community building initiative to serve and develop society and the globe with science. However, there was personal story behind Women in Science Without Borders. I have a dream, like Martin Luther Jr. said, that to develop society with science, to make science available for all, to connect people and the world with science, because from my belief, science is happiness, it's not burden. And also, if we have to see that women in science, the share of women in science is still lagging behind, really. It's still less than expected. As example, from the numbers, from the percentages all over the world of the share of women in science in several parts of the world. Generally, the share of women in science is less than 30% globally. But it's different. The share of women in science is different from country to country and region from region. Like, fortunately, in Egypt, the share of women in science is very good, maybe 50% or so on. But in other parts of the world, it's not like that. So that we need to increase this percentage because, as I said, women in science, the presence of women in science is very important because it's a very important partner in the scientific cooperation. Also, if we look to fields, the women usually prefer some fields more than some fields. Maybe because of the reputation of some fields like chemistry or physics or something like that. They are very difficult, they couldn't live or they couldn't make family or something like that. Maybe in Egypt, sometimes I heard some girls said that biology is much better than chemistry or so on, but it's not true. We have to encourage women in science in all fields as a real partner. If we see the Nobel Prizes, we can see also that the number of women is still less than the number of men. 58 from 958. This year, I said, fortunately, the number increased, but we still need more women in prestigious prizes like Nobel and so on. Also, the share of women decreased by the pathway. As example, the number of women at undergraduate studies in the college or something like that, more the percentage of girls more than the percentage of women by increasing the qualifications and so on to reach to 6% at the higher academia level in some countries. So that's why 50% at the college stage, and then decreasing the numbers by time. During PhD, we lose some numbers, and during postdocs, we lose some numbers, and so on. At the higher level of academia, which maybe to 6% in some countries, and so on. So that it's a defect also. We have to encourage the women to be professional in science, not only to have a degree and then stop. We have to encourage her along her pathway till the higher level of academia. Also, there are some numbers from a severe report from numbers like 5.5 million papers and 27.3 million authorships. About 70% of the total publications from men, and 66% from the first authorship from men as well. Also from the innovations and patents, the number is very low. As example, from patents and innovations, only 14% from the women represented in the PCT applications data, the innovations. So that it's very low number. So that all of that are the reasons why Women in Science Without Borders. It's a summary. It's one page summary. Why Women in Science Without Borders: to empower society with science. How to empower society with science? Because of the inclusion of women, so that it's additional force to empower the society with science, so that we can obtain a gender inclusive society in the future. Also by connecting the world, all of them, the aims of or the goals of Women in Science Without Borders: connecting the world and the people with science, science for sustainable development, empowerment of females by cooperation with males, empowerment of youth in science and technology, innovation, science for all, and science diplomacy. Science is shared effort among all partners and all stakeholders in the society. The big thing in Women in Science Without Borders is that we confess that we have all to collaborate. As example, in our meetings, we have decision makers, we have industry people, we have usually industry, and we from the beginning we were supported from industry. All our meetings supported from industry, like Sanofi, like Johnson and Johnson, like Wellcome Trust, and the big corporation like Elsevier, and so on. So that we confess that we are partners. All of them are partners. Industry, decision makers, youth, the public, and scientists, whether young or seniors, NGOs. We have all together and sit together and listen to each other to reach to collaboration and mutual understanding to solve the big problems and the mutual concern along along the country, or during pandemic like this. We need cooperation. so that we believe in that. And in all our meetings, we made this experience. We gather all partners from the society, from industry, and so on. So that we had several meetings. Our annual meeting called World Forum for Women in Science. We made the two meetings in Egypt, one in Brazil and one in South Africa. We spread over 60 countries now, not 40. This data is old. And next year we will have Youth Science Forum to encourage the young people and the youth from 17 to 40 to have science as proficiency and to encourage the involvement of youth in science more. Also, we will have World Forum for Women in Science specialized for or dedicated for refugees in Iraq, Kurdistan. Also, from the beginning, we had big support from big organizations like International Science Council, UNESCO, TWAS, and TWAS-TAYAN, and so on, and GYA as well. Here, the distribution of our country, we have one person from Costa Rica near you. I don't know the demography, but it's first time really to speak in Jamaica or this area of the world. Our conference is usually divided into three events: training, and then the conference, and then students' activity or competition. As I said, we make collaboration or mixture between all disciplines. We have always multidisciplinary conferences, biology, medicine, pharmacy, with engineering, with agriculture, with environment, with social sciences as well. And maybe we can have some courses from leadership, entrepreneurship, and so on, so that we collect all partners, all scientists, all the interested ones in science in one platform. Our conferences, our events, our meetings, and students' activities, always, all our activities always around the Sustainable Development Goals. We have usually students' activities like lectures, like competitions, like everything like that. And in competitions, we insist that the competitions in teams, always run in teams. And the team from 2 persons to 5 persons to encourage the next generations to be gender inclusive. We have to educate the next generation to cooperate with each other regardless of the gender. These are pictures from our previous conferences. This is in Egypt. This one is South Africa. You can see the interaction between all generations. And this one, the last one in Brazil. We made one in Brazil, and I think our initiative is sustainable because all our events outside Egypt were organized by previous participants of previous events. As example, the chair of the South Africa meeting was a participant in Egypt meeting in 2017, and so on. So that the idea transfers with the participants of previous events and so on. This one is Brazil meeting. The percentage usually of the share of males to females about 30 to 70 or 20 to 80. Till now, the share of males less than the share of females, and it's expected and not equal. The maximum 30 to 70 or 40 to 60, but it's expected because usually they see the name Women in Science Without Borders. Unless we explain, they will not share. But usually in all my correspondences, all my meetings and so on, I say that we Women in Science Without Borders for males and females, and we have to cooperate with each other. Even the name is Women in Science Without Borders, but it's the target group, the women in science. But it will not happen without the presence of males or the cooperation with males. The gender equality must happen, but it must happen with the cooperation between them. So that I hope in the future meeting the percentage of males will increase more than 30 or 40%. Maybe we can reach to 50-50 as expected. Other activities, as I said, the next year we will have World Forum for Women in Science for Refugees, and we will have Youth Science Forum in Egypt because of pandemic. It was postponed the Youth Science Forum from 2020 to 2021. These days, from the beginning of September, we started to organize Saturday Science webinars. It's another activity to share in the global initiatives about discussions and so on about the challenges facing humanity at the age of COVID-19 and beyond. The first webinar was in 5th of September, then 19th of September, and the third one will be on 24th of October. And I cordially invite all the attendees to attend these seminars or webinars. It's free, they are free, but during these webinars we discuss about the challenges, which I think the humanity faces the same challenges like cancer, like education, like agriculture, and so on, in addition to pandemic, so that we have more challenge, so that it's useful to discuss the point of views and the solutions, the challenges, and so on. From the beginning, we got very good appreciation from the press, whether in Egypt or outside Egypt, where my deeds were recognized in the Women in Science NAZAC, the book of inspiring stories from Africa from the Network for African Academies, and in several other publications. Also, this one is from the website of Brazilian Academy of Sciences. Next Truth, it's a magazine from Germany, Scientific African, and in Nature this year, 2020, we got recognition from Nature, where there was an article, interesting article about us, that they considered us as a successful mentoring platform. And also in Egypt, I wrote about Women in Science Without Borders, where we got recognition about it, and also in the second book of NAZAC, the Network of African Academies, and in Women in Science in Africa. They interviewed me about Women in Science Without Borders and other achievements, and in 1 million Women in Science, and also in Royal Academy of Science, the Chemistry World magazine. They interviewed me, and I was chosen as one of the successful stories of over 40 in Egypt. We are on the social media. I invite all of you to like our page, Women in Science Without Borders. It's free, and you can share all your thoughts, events, and so on. I can give a brief look about the steps of the road, my road, that I was inspired by Marie Curie, my role model, so that I choose chemistry. I transferred him from Egypt to Germany to study PhD. I got hard time there in Germany because of cultural differences. And against stereotypes, where I accompanied my family, and it was very hard to work and to have family at the time, 1999, and they returned back the day before the attacks, the U.S. Terrorist attack, and it was very hard because the time at that time it was challenging really, because everything's turned down, and it seemed that we need something solid to talk on this space. We need something solid like science. to talk with instead of politics, instead of cultural differences, and so on, so that I choose science to be my language and my template for the change. Because from the time of my return, I adopted the change by science, so that I started from Egypt, where I established several templates, associations, and so on, like Egyptian Society for Advanced Materials and Nanotechnology, also the Arab Network for Nanotechnology, and then I was nominated for TUAS to be Young Athlete. I had other activities, as Marvedin said. I was present in different organizations, different activities, different conferences, and so on. I traveled in several countries, maybe tens of times to one country. Each of them, like Germany, I traveled several times, and so on. I had visited big organizations, big institutes in my field. I shared in different activities all over the world. I wrote about my beliefs, science diplomacy, several publications. Also for women in science, I shared in different mentoring programs in Egypt, outside Egypt. And here I can summarize my deeds like founder and chair of Women in Science Without Borders. Now it spreads over 60 countries, not 48, and founder and chair of World Forum for Women in Science, organizer of several activities, co-founder of Egyptian and Global Young Academy, Young Athlete DRD Fellow, and others. I can summarize that the talents required for science diplomats communication skills, negotiation skills, and others. And I can give some tips for successful careers from my experience. Before start deciding any about your future, you must have faith in yourself and your abilities. Define and dream big and high, but know yourself. Not to dream big and be not working or something like that. So that dream big, but work very hard. Have always mentor or role model. A great inspiration. Think out of box. You have to be creative, always happy, and learning, training, and develop yourself. Be optimistic, humble, sincere, patient, and strong. Every drop is a new start, and the light will come at the end of the tunnel. Don't look behind, just go forward. Be accomplished with every day to-do list. Don't lose time with very hard work. Enjoy what you do. Be happy even with small details. Loving and caring for life, people, and society. Finally, in conclusion, I can say that empowerment will be more effective with collaboration and networking. Together, we'll be stronger. Finally, I will say, like Marie Curie, that life is not easy for any of us, but what of that, we must have perseverance and, above all, confidence in ourselves. We must believe that we are gifted for something and that this thing must be attempted. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you.
Amin. And ladies and gentlemen, you will join me in giving her a virtual round of applause and telling her thanks for the introduction to science diplomacy and the words of encouragement, certainly for especially the young scientists among us. And so now what is important is an active discussion. And we're opening the floor for you. You can just indicate by raising your hand, make a comment. You might have a question for Prof. Amin. I'm sure she's waiting for that. I can begin the discussion as usual. Amal, I will say in this taxonomy for science diplomacy, whether it is science in diplomacy, science for diplomacy, or diplomacy for science. And most of us who are here are scientists and students of science. We do have some people who are working in policy, but I find that the scientists, as scientists, we always complain that the policymakers and the business people do not understand science. And we need to all realize as scientists that in order for this to work, we also must understand politics and policy and business. Amal, I invite you to comment on this.
Yes, usually, really. I myself, in the beginning, I usually say that my country wouldn't listen to science anymore and so on. But afterward, with my experience, I believe that you understand, we are in our ivory towers. You understand, we are always in developing countries. We are working for promotion. We are working for our career. We are very busy in ourselves. I say that we are working in separate islands. We are not working in teams, even in teams. We sometimes couldn't work in teams. So that we have to be initiative. We have to initiate this dialogue. We have to speak to the policymakers. We have to write about our thoughts, our times. I will give you a story. In the beginning, when I travel always to conferences and so on, I never get a picture. I never get any conversation outside the conference itself. Then my daughter said, "Why, Mama? You travel all over the world and you have no single picture about your travels." Then I began from the advice from the young girl to begin to hear to another people. You understand, to other people, to hear to other discussions. Maybe you can take a picture, maybe you can try to speak in another subject, to have a discussion in another thing and so on, so that you can build the bridges. That's what I say, build the bridges. You have to begin to build the bridges. And then afterward, you will find the fruit, but all the time we complain about nobody hear us. Nobody will hear you. Always for the journalists, the press, and so on, they will not write about you. You have to go to them. You have to express about your attention, about your interest, to express about your interest in their subjects and so on. Follow up the decision makers. Just comment on their Facebook pages. Write in the newspapers your opinion and so on. If we make that, we will find someone hear us. You understand? I am working in
Absolutely.
if I will say to myself that plastic is harmful all the time, nobody will hear me. But if I will transfer to the next step and write about the harms of the plastic as example and the alternates of these plastics and so on, I will find someone to hear me. That's what I say. We have to build the bridges.
Thank you very much, Prof. I invite Professor Kawa. Prof. Kawa, please turn your camera on if you can. Yes,
Yeah,
so we
yes,
can
I
meet
have.
each other. Go right ahead.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And I want to congratulate Professor Mal for the excellent and hard work, I think, which she has been doing. I wanted to hear a comment from her regarding the issue of collaborations. For developing countries, collaborations are generally driven by access to resources. And I was wondering whether in the organizations that she has formed, the issue of mobilizing resources to support women and other needy researchers is in the forefront of the things that she does.
The immobilization, usually the mobilization, all the funds for all organizations dedicated to the mobilization. So that I think now the young scientists have big opportunities for mobilization. But the problem after you return back to your country, not the mobilization. I think for mobilization, I have no problem. with my country, we have here several programs. I don't know about the Caribbean. What about Caribbean, Mavridin? You have
Several
several.
several problems, and the problems are similar, Amal. We do get opportunities for young people to travel, and then when they come back to the country, as Prof. Kawa is, I think this is his point, he's trying to emphasize
Yeah,
that the resource is here to continue the work and put what we
yeah,
have learned in practice.
yeah.
And
This
so,
is a problem everywhere
Yeah.
because the mobilization is good. The mobilization opportunity is very good. You can get PhD from outside. As example here, maybe 70% of the Egyptian students can get PhD from outside because usually they encourage the young people to get PhD from outside. The problem on their return, right? On their return, they
mhm,
can get funds from outside the organizations, but there are certain programs. You need experts with you to write project, definite project to have this fund, so that it's big way. And we wrote about that in nature. It's very difficult everywhere, from the age after PhD, directly from PhD to
Yes.
be expert. It's very, very hard everywhere.
Mhm.
So that you have to have collaboration with the seniors in your
Yes.
country at first to have this fund. Otherwise, you will not get it because all the reviewers will see your CV, and for the new PhD, no CV, no
Yeah.
publications. So that
Yes.
it's everywhere, the problem everywhere. And I expressed about this problem in one meeting for EU, the European Union, that they usually give the projects to the big names, usually, not the
Mhm.
young scientists. But they said
Right.
that the money must be governed by experienced ones and so on. So that what I advise the young people to have collaboration with
Mhm.
the seniors, and
Right. But
that's the only way. I think that's the only way. What do you think?
yeah, I was thinking that is a that it is very important for the countries themselves to begin putting together some amount of resources on the side to either support specific programs or to support specific initiatives. But some kind of funding has to be available from national resources. The countries have to begin to invest in research and doing and supporting
Yeah,
the sort of things you are doing.
all right.
It doesn't have to be a whole lot of money. It can't be a whole lot of money, but there must be a realization in the government circles that they must begin to put money aside to
But
support indigenous research.
In Egypt now we have agency called STDF. It's Science and Technology Fund, like NSF and so on in US, and they they give a good fund for the projects and so on. But still, you need to have team. Still, you need to have collaboration with seniors and with young. You need to have big teams because you know the competition is very high, and the money is not very big, so that the opportunity is still not very high. The same
yes.
problem.
Okay, thanks, Prof. Amin. You know, I've spoken about this in TWAS myself. I've asked for some funding to be put aside to build research infrastructure, even in small pieces of equipment, because we have a lot of opportunities for the exchange of people to go there and somebody to come in. And now, especially with the pandemic, with movement being limited, maybe we have to look at a model where we are providing small pockets of funding for infrastructure and building capacity in infrastructure. But I also want to point out, and I know we have Dr. Mackenzie from our Ministry of Science here in the seminar. I want to point out that I see, and I would like for our countries to see universities as embassies of science. If we
Mm.
are seen as embassies of science, then as scientists working in embassies of science, we will embrace science diplomacy and science in politics and science in international relations. And the governments will embrace the science to serve
But you need
politics.
capacity. You need big capacity. You are not Harvard. You understand? You need big
That's right.
capacity in your communities and so on. And you need also political decision before everything. You need political decision to give the university this capacity. But in US, no political decision. The university can do anything they want. If you heard, Trump objected about the foreign students. Then Harvard and the big universities went to the court and they forced them to return back, and then they canceled the decision. It's another
Challenging.
case. It's another case, another word.
Okay, we have a comment and question here from Mark Collins, and Mark is one of our young scientists, our early career chemists. He says, thank you for the wonderful presentation, Prof. Amin. You spoke about Marie Curie as one of your role models and inspiration. What are some of the qualities that you think a mentor or older established scientist should have in order to be an effective role model or inspiration for younger persons who may or may not know whether they want to pursue science?
I think persistence. Persistence is a very important thing because all of us may be very good, but you understand the way is very long. How to continue this way so that you have to be persistent. You have to be a little bit patient. You have to be fighter. That's all.
You remain persistent, and in order to win this battle, certainly in developing countries like ours, that is going to be key. All right, ladies and gentlemen, are there any further questions that you would like to Nijol? We have another early career chemist here, recently graduated with her PhD, Amal, and this is Dr. Nijol Young. Go right ahead, Nijol.
All right, thank you for your fantastic presentation, Professor Amal. I just have two questions. How do young scientists go about joining these organizations? Because you mentioned Women in Science Without Borders, as well as how do we participate in the Saturday Science webinars?
Nijol,
Everything's
I've
on
sent
our
that.
page. Everything in on our Facebook page. You can easily register in the next Saturday Science webinar. And if you register in one of our events, you will be a member. Because now we open the same registration to be a member in our network. And all of our activities are free so that you can get in our network with no money. It's free by only registration, simple registration. Just go to our website, to our Facebook page. You will find all our announcements. Just go inside and you will be in our world.
And I've been sending out the Saturday Science flyers.
Yeah.
Okay. And my last question are, what are some of the goals that your initiative has achieved in terms of, you mentioned increasing enrollment of men in the Women in Science Without Borders organization?
Yeah. I mentioned that this initiative is for women and men because I discovered that women to women, speech women to women, it's not worthy and it's not truthful. We are colleagues, we are partners, so that we have to speak to each other. That's why what I want to do, to have 50-50 from males and females in our initiative, to have fruitful discussions, fruitful collaboration, and so on. Not to have separate environments. I believe that I am a scientist. I am not a woman scientist. You understand me?
That's right. All right. Thank you, Prof. Amin. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If there are no more questions, then it is only left for me to thank Professor Amin. What she's really done, you will imagine, or if you think about it, is, and this whole business of science diplomacy and science in international relations as a tool for networking, it's an old concept and it's been packaged in a new way called science diplomacy, because there has been cooperation and scientists have been working for a long time now across borders, but it is something that is being packaged embrace politics, business, and research for development. I will forward the Saturday Science information, Dr. Delahaye Mackenzie, to you also. I invite you now to just join me and again thank Professor Amal for taking the time, taking her evening to join us. And ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to continue to read, continue to follow, continue or start to like and follow Amal. She's very much out there on all the social media platforms. I really do not know how she manages to do all of that and keep so connected. Thank you very much for joining us in this Thursday seminar series, Amal, and thank you everybody. See you again next week when we continue in the department's Thursday seminar series. Somebody is saying here that Celia, truly amazing and life-changing work, Professor Amal. Thank you. Thank you so much, Amal, for inspiring all of us in the world and certainly on this side. Stay safe, everybody. Amal, you and I will can probably stay back a few minutes if you don't mind.
No, thanks a lot. I will stay. Thanks.